What's up, y'all? It's Ty. In this video, we're going to be talking about every number 4 overall pick since the merger in 1976, ranking them on a tier list from S tier being the best of the best to F tier being a bona fide absolute scrub. Let's start it off here with Leon Douglas. I'm going to go D tier. In his best season, averaged 11-8, but just had a pretty short career. Didn't really do a whole ton and was out of the league after 4 or 5 years in the NBA. The 11-year career of Greg Ballard is one that was pretty solid. I mean, again, number 4 overall pick. You're not talking about the 1 or 2 overall pick. For a 4th overall pick, had an 11-year career. It averaged 18 points in his best season. Maybe could go C tier, but I think B tier is the right spot for Greg Ballard. Michael Ray Richardson had a fantastic career, was maybe a top 15 player in the league in his prime, battled substance abuse issues, ended up being out of the league by the age of 30 with the substance abuse issues. Kind of sad to see because right as he was in his prime, maybe a top 15 player in the league, didn't end up panning out a whole ton. I'm still going to go A tier because, again, in his prime was so elite. In the 1979 draft, the Detroit Pistons selected Greg Kelser, who didn't have a very good career. I'm going to go D tier, another guy that was out of the league after 5 or 6 years. Kelvin Ramsey had such an interesting career. His rookie season finished 15th in MVP voting. Absolutely crazy, because he was out of the league in 5 years. This career is one that I'm still shocked about. Al Wood had a 6-year career after being selected by the Atlanta Hawks, but during that career just wasn't great. D tier. Bill Garnett out of Wyoming, I think, is going to be our first F tier player. He's what I would call a bust. After 4 years, he was out of the league, and in those 4 years was absolutely horrible. It's crazy to me that Byron Scott never made an All-Star game because he's a 3-time NBA champion, had some really solid years. I'm going to put him in A tier. Maybe was never as good as Michael Ray Richardson was in his prime, but had a long career that is one that should be appreciated. The career of Sam Perkins is kind of somewhat similar to Byron Scott. I don't think quite as good, but I do want to put him at A tier. He had a good and long NBA career. I think I'm going to put him at B tier just because I think in his prime, Byron Scott obviously was better than Sam Perkins. Xavier McDaniel in his early NBA career was so good. The first 4 or 5 years was fantastic. An all-star in his 2nd or 3rd year. Put up some pretty big numbers. I'm going to go A tier. In his later career, obviously wasn't quite as good, but I still think A tier is the right spot for how good of a number 4 overall pick he was. The Indiana Pacers selected Chuck Person number 4 overall in the 1986 draft. And I think he might deserve A tier, but it's just tough because Xavier McDaniel probably was better in his prime, but I think Chuck Person did it for the majority of his early career. I'm going to throw him in A tier as well. Reggie Williams didn't have a great career until he got to Denver. Once he got to Denver, his career kind of peaked, kind of took off. I think I'll go B tier. It just stinks early on in his career. Never really figured it out, but once he got to Denver, was really good. In the 1988 draft, the New Jersey Nets selected Chris Morris with the number 4 overall pick. Had a decent career. It's just tough because that's a lot of what these guys are. We have had no guy that I've covered so far be great, which is crazy because we're at 12 years in and the best we got is a couple-time All-Star up here. It's kind of sad. And that's when we get to Glenn Rice, easy addition into S tier. As I was putting together this, I realized Glenn Rice shot 47% from 3 on 5 or 6 attempts a game. Do you realize how crazy that is? 47% from the 3-point line? I mean, my goodness, the absolute sharpshooter deserves your respect. Glenn Rice, easy addition to S tier. Here we got another sharpshooter in Dennis Scott. I can only go B tier because the amount of great years he had was limited, but was really solid, especially as a role player in the early part of his career. B tier for Dennis Scott. Next up, Dikembe Mutombo, all-time great on that defensive end of the court. S tier easy. If anybody could get the number 4 pick this year to turn out like Dikembe Mutombo, they would be more than pleased. Jim Jackson had a really good career. In his best year, put up 26 points on pretty efficient shooting. Honestly, early part of his career was outstanding. Never really did anything too crazy, you know, as far as his accomplishments, but I do think he did enough to deserve A tier. Jamal Mashburn is such a sad story. If you look up what Jamal Mashburn was able to do in his prime, it was unbelievable. Suffered a bad knee injury and just never was able to recover from it. If he would have been, he might even be up there at S tier because he was so good. Gotta go A tier. It's just kind of a sad story for Jamal Mashburn, but he was absolutely elite. And then you got a guy like Donyell Marshall, who is just a really good role player. Honestly, never was like an all-star, never was an all-NBA player, but was a great six-man for some teams. B tier Donyell Marshall, a solid number 4 overall pick. For as much hate as Rasheed Wallace gets for hooping in Air Forces, he was very good throughout his NBA career. 4-time all-star, 1-time NBA champion. A tier for sure for Rasheed. Obviously, I don't think he deserves S tier. I think Glenn Rice had a better career. That's just me. In his prime, I'll take Glenn Rice. But Rasheed Wallace was really good. Stephon Marbury, easy A tier addition. I might have to, like I said, move some guys down here because I don't like what I've got going on. And I'm going to make some quick adjustments because Starbury was a 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA player. It's just tough to move any of these guys down from A tier. So I'm not going to. Like, I just went back and looked at every single one of these guys and I'm like, you know what? They were really good and deserving of A tier. So I'm just going to leave the list like it is. With the number 4 pick, the Vancouver Grizzlies selected Antonio Davis in the 1997 draft. He wasn't very good. D tier, never really found it in the NBA, which I'm kind of glad he's D tier. I need to level out this tier list at some stage. Anton Jamison, couple-time All-Star, won a 6th Man of the Year. A tier for Anton Jamison. Even a guy like Lamar Odom, who never was an all-star, never really was that elite of elite level, is a 2-time NBA champ, was a great 6th man. How am I not supposed to put him at A tier? Now, I'm from Iowa. Marcus Fizer was a letdown from Iowa State with the number 4 overall pick, a D tier. The thing with Eddie Curry is he had some good years, but it was so short-lived that I gotta throw him at B tier. And this is where it doesn't feel right, that I'm putting Drew Gooden at the same tier of Eddie Curry. I'm going to move Eddie Curry down just because a guy like Drew Gooden had a longer, more solid career, in my opinion. Again, never was an all-NBA level player, but was really solid for a couple of different teams. In the 2003 NBA draft, the Raptors selected Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh, 2-time NBA champ, 11-time All-Star, S tier. Sean Livingston is an interesting one. Stats probably say D tier, but he had a long and impactful career on some teams. I'm going to go C tier with Sean Livingston. I mean, Chris Paul, the accolades, the stats all speak for themselves. S tier. I know he's ringless and everybody makes fun of him for that, but Chris Paul, such a good long career. Tyrese Thomas never was very good. I'm going to throw him at D tier. So Mike Conley is such an interesting player to me. I'm going to throw him at A tier. The thing for me is Mike Conley has had such a long, great career in the NBA. In his prime was an all-star caliber player, a great defensive player as well. A tier for Mike Conley feels right. Russell Westbrook, it's too easy. For being the number 4th pick, S tier, 9-time All-Star, and won an MVP award. In his prime, one of the more exciting and revolutionary players that I've seen. Like how he changed the game, rebounding the ball at the point guard position. Tyreke Evans is an interesting one. He won Rookie of the Year after being drafted 4th by the Sacramento Kings. Just kind of had a downward trend since that rookie season. I'll go B tier. He was decent as a rookie. For a number 4 pick, B tier feels right. It feels right for me that Wesley Johnson got drafted to the Minnesota Timberwolves and then just had a bad career. D tier. Tristan Thompson has impacted winning a little bit on some different teams. C tier. It's crazy that he's still in the league because he does nothing now. Next up, Dion Waiters. I'll throw him at C tier. He wasn't bad as far as a bucket getter. Cody Zeller, I guess I'll throw him. I'm throwing Cody Zeller at D tier. I mean, what has he done? Aaron Gordon, I'll go B tier. And I don't know. It doesn't feel right putting him at B tier because he's been really good. I think Aaron Gordon is going. I got to go B tier. Right now, No, he's going A tier. I don't know. I'm in between A tier and B tier. I like Aaron Gordon. I feel like there's no right spot for him. I'm going to go B tier. Hasn't made an all-star team. He's a one-time NBA champ. He does impact winning. B tier feels right. Kristaps has just battled so many injuries in his career. I'm going to go B tier for what he's done so far. One-time all-star. He probably will win an NBA championship this year. I'll go B tier. Kristaps, if you could stay healthy, could be so elite. I don't know who had this scouting report out on Dragan Bender, but they deserve to be fired and jobless for the rest of their lives. The bona fide scrub should have never made it to the NBA. At least with Josh Jackson, he had some decent years in the NBA. I'm still throwing him at F tier. He's out of the league in 5 years, was an inefficient guy in the league. I thought he was going to be so good out of college. Just hasn't really panned out. Jaren Jackson Jr., I know it's going to make some people mad. I'm putting him over Kristaps. Right now, he's still young. He's still promising. Defense Player of the Year candidate, year in, year out, can stretch the court. A tier for Jaren Jackson Jr., where I think he's going to end up. DeAndre Hunter has been the definition of mid. I think he's B tier right now. He's going to continue to get better. He's got to play on some winning teams if he wants to get higher than that, though. Patrick Williams, so far in his career, I got to go C tier. I like Patrick Williams, though. Looks like a 3-and-D player for the future. I think he's going to get better. Hopefully, can improve on his young career. Scotty Barnes, where do I think he's going to end up? A tier. Has shown so much promise in his young career. Might be the best player on that Toronto Raptors team. Should be the guy the Toronto Raptors rebuild around. Keegan Murray, right now, I think I got to go B tier. Again, has shown a lot of promise. I think Scotty Barnes just has a higher ceiling than Keegan Murray. Keegan has been really, really, really good throughout his young career, though. Last but certainly not least, Amen Thompson. For a rookie, did a lot of things well on the court. I just think his inability to shoot the ball is going to hurt him and his future. Defends well, a good playmaker. C tier is where I think he's going to end up as far as a player. That's going to wrap it up for our tier list on the number 4 draft picks in NBA history. 5 guys at S tier. If you make a lineup of these guys, you're going to have a really successful team. CP3, Russell Westbrook, I don't know if they'd get along. Glenn Rice, an absolute sharpshooter. Chris Bosh, Dikembe Mutombo. Drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new, and as always, man, I love you guys. Have a blessed day.